The UK is demanding an Apple backdoor again. Windows is losing more workarounds to avoid Microsoft accounts again. Amazon is bringing facial recognition to their Ring cameras for the first time, I think. And more. Welcome to Surveillance Port 243, where we are dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news from the past 2 weeks. I am Nathan from The New Oil.
And I'm Henry from Techlore.
Our sponsor this week is EasyOptOuts. Many of you may know, especially here in America, if you jump online and look up your name, especially if you have a unique name or your phone number or your main email address, a lot of personal data about you usually pops up. EasyOptOuts is a service to help automatically remove some of that data from the most popular people search websites on your behalf and save you some time. They're very affordable at only $20 a year. Cancellation is easy. They offer refunds if you're not satisfied. Consumer Reports and Privacy Guides have both done research and found that EasyOptOuts is almost as effective as doing it yourself. New York Times Wirecutters recommends it as one of their top data removal services. You don't have to give any information that isn't already out there. They're just trying to make sure they find the right record and remove it. There's only 2 employees, so they're not sharing your data with a lot of third-party contractors or anything like that. No ads or analytics on the platform. They only request data removal if they find your data. So some of these other competitors will just kind of pray and spray, and if that website didn't have your data before, they do now. But EasyOptOuts makes sure your data is there first before submitting a request. They are constantly adding new sites over time, and they have business plans. So if you are looking for a way to help take some of that work off your plate and help with your privacy a little bit, you can always do it manually. We do agree that's a very effective way to do it, but it's also very time consuming. So this can help take care of some of that low hanging fruit and make the process a little bit less painful. Last but not least, as you guys have noticed, our schedules have been completely crazy. Our recording quality's been a little weird. We are done with travel for a while, or at least I am. Things should get back to normal is what I'm trying to say. Thank you guys for your patience, and hopefully things will get back to a more regular schedule here in the near future. And our highlight story this week is going to come from the UK. It's not you guys. This is, if you're having deja vu, this is not an old story being recycled or anything like that. Although I wouldn't blame you for thinking so, because history rhymes, or as Lions Led by Donkey says, time is a flat circle. The UK once again demands backdoor to Apple's encrypted cloud storage. So a little bit of context here for those who don't know. Was it earlier this year or was it like last year? What is time? Earlier this year, the UK, for reasons nobody's quite sure of, spontaneously decided that they want a backdoor into Apple's iCloud. Apple, a couple years ago, rolled out something called advanced data protection, which is where basically they end-to-end encrypt iCloud. Contacts, email, or calendar were not included, but everything else, your health data, your files, your images, all that kind of stuff was encrypted, end-to-end encrypted, so even Apple couldn't see it. And the UK, for whatever reason, decided that this is a serious problem to national security. It's absolutely causing the downfall of humanity, puppies and kittens raining from the sky, the whole nine. They definitely don't have other issues they need to worry about. This was the priority number one. So they decided that this has to go. And they secretly issued an order to Apple saying that you have to put a backdoor in your encryption that, quote unquote, only the good guys can use, because that's always the fantasy that they try to sell people on. And Apple was not allowed to talk about this. I don't think we ever found out how the story broke, but apparently some kind of whistleblower came to the press and leaked this story and it became public. Apple decided to just withdraw advanced data protection in the UK. So if you're in the UK, I think even now you still can't use advanced data protection. It's been rolled back because Apple said we're not going to put a backdoor in our stuff. Like I just said a minute ago, this whole idea of a backdoor that only the good guys can use is not a real thing. It's a fantasy that either malicious people or people who don't understand how the technology works, and sometimes those are the same people, they try to claim that to make everybody feel better, but it's just not true. And not to get too far off topic, but I want to point out that on this podcast, we have documented numerous cases of authorized people abusing that same access. So even if hypothetically that was true, like that it's a backdoor that only the good guys can use, the only way you could actually 100% ensure that is if you could read somebody's mind and see their intention. Because even the people who are authorized and cleared to use this kind of stuff will still abuse it to do things like stalk their exes or steal secrets and sell them online. Like this is a thing. So yeah, it's a total fantasy. So this is all the context of the story. Apple pulled it and the whole fight became public. Thankfully, I think the UK courts did decide like, yeah, this is because a lot of countries, the US especially, will try to pull this argument of like, oh, we can't take this to court because it'll jeopardize national security because we'll have to present all this evidence that's classified. If I'm remembering correctly, the UK shot that argument down and was like, no, you have to fight this out in court if you want to do this. Thankfully, earlier this year, the UK walked back that decision. They said, never mind, we're going to drop that request. I don't know. I mean, who really knows what goes on behind the doors in politics? But I know the Trump administration tried to take some credit for that and say, like, we convinced the UK. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Anyways, temporarily, we said, cool, win. UK dropped this. And now we're back here. The UK has decided, never mind, we changed our mind again, and we do want that backdoor. So I know that was a lot of context, but also, to be honest, that's kind of most of the story is context because this is really a short story. Kind of the only thing that's different this time around is this quote here on the article. It says, two senior British government figures said the US administration was no longer leaning on the UK government to rescind the order. Other than that, everything looks kind of the same. Okay, there is a small difference. They say they've issued a new order to Apple to create a backdoor, this time targeting only British users' data, despite US claims that Britain had abandoned all attempts. So I don't know what that means, targeting only British users' data, because I'm pretty sure that was their argument the first time. They only have authority in Britain. So technically, they can only tell Apple to break encryption for British users. Like, I don't know. I'm confused. Like, that was one of the arguments that Apple pushed back on is like, if we do this for you, we have to do this for everyone. And now they're trying to say, no, you only have to do it for British people, which is really what they only had legal authority to do in the first place. But how does that work? Like, if you're British and you go on vacation to another country, presumably you still have that backdoored version of iCloud. What if you move to another country? At what point do you prove citizenship and get that not backdoored version? It's just, I don't know. This sounds, again, incredibly either naive or malicious from people who don't understand how tech works. Our official stance here is there's no such thing as a backdoor only the good guys can use. And Henry actually pointed out when the UK originally walked this decision back, I might be paraphrasing you wrong here, but you did make a point that it's kind of concerning that the only reason they rolled it back was because the US was pressuring them. And now we see why. Like, now that the US doesn't care anymore, they don't care and they're back at it. It would be nice if governments and people in power valued privacy for the sake of it, but instead it's usually like privacy for me and not for thee. You know, a lot of the time they'll pass laws that members of parliament, their addresses can't be published and they get all these extra special privacy laws, but the rest of us just, we don't deserve any kind of civil liberties or considerations. I don't really have an opinion on this that we didn't already say the first time around and that I haven't recapped here. So I think that's all I got.
Yeah, and maybe what's a bit more sinister, it depends how you read this. Again, we kind of have to try to figure out people's motivations and why they were doing what they were trying to do based on just context, which is really difficult sometimes. So a quote here, UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Last month, they hosted Trump for a state visit, during which the two world leaders announced that US tech companies would invest billions of dollars to build AI infrastructure in Britain. Members of the US delegation raised the issue of the request to Apple around the time of Trump's visit, according to two people briefed on the matter. However, two senior British government figures said the US administration was no longer leaning on the UK government to rescind the order. So, it depends how you want to read into this situation. The way I might read this and look at this is, was the Trump administration putting pressure on the UK just a pressure tactic to eventually just get this investment through, and now the US doesn't care anymore? Is that like the long-term goal of all of this? I don't know, because now it seems like they're not too concerned about it anymore. And I don't know what's concerned about it and no longer anymore concerned. It could be that. It could be there was an agreement reached, like maybe because of this investment into the country, then they're now able to also, still ban end-to-end encryption. I don't know, but this is the kind of stuff that we can't really guarantee what's going on. So best you can do is theorize. This one has been definitely making the rounds, so you guys have probably heard it by now, and this is the data breaches, which is Discord has disclosed a data breach after hackers have stolen support tickets. I'm going to have a second kind of thing to talk about with this story. As I go through it, let's go through the main information here. So hackers stole partial payment information and personally identifiable data, including names and government-issued IDs. They're saying this is because of a third-party customer service provider, which is Zendesk. The attack occurred on September 20th and affected a limited number of users who interacted with Discord's customer support and/or trust and safety teams. On Friday, they disclosed the incident publicly, saying that it took immediate action to isolate the support provider from the ticketing system. However, there's been a lot of back and forth as to who's actually responsible for this. Discord said it wasn't our breach, it was Zendesk's breach. Zendesk even denied the breach on their end. Originally, I don't know if they still are, but this included personally identifiable information like real names and usernames, email addresses, and other contact details provided to the support team. Social communication service has IP addresses, messages, and attachments, and the hackers also accessed photos of government-issued identification documents, including driver's licenses and passports, for a small number of users. Keep in mind, when we say small, that's their quote. This is still dozens of thousands of people. The actual hacker claims more, and so this is kind of an unclear territory. Everyone's saying different things, and it also includes payment information as well.
Our next data breach comes from Harrods, which is a UK retail giant who had a data breach exposing 430,000 customer records. This is a London-based luxury goods department store, operates a full-featured e-commerce platform catering to international customers. Apart from names and contact details, some customer records also included tags and labels used internally for marketing and other services that Harrods provides. These labels may include tier level or affiliation to a Harrods co-branded card, so like a loyalty credit card, for example, although this information is unlikely to be interpreted accurately by an unauthorized third party. Despite the exposure, Harrods underlines that the leaked data does not include account passwords, payment information, or order histories, and is limited to basic personal identifiers. The article didn't really go into detail about like names and contact details and what personal info.
WestJet, which is an airline, and they are a major airline in North America. They have 150 aircrafts, and if you use WestJet, you know what WestJet is. This happened in June. It impacted 1.2 million customers, and according to the findings, the following data types have been exposed, including full names, date of births, mailing addresses, travel documents like passport or government IDs, requested accommodations, filed complaints, WestJet rewards member IDs, points, and other information, and then WestJet RBC MasterCard. WestJet, the WestJet ecosystem cards, essentially. So that's pretty much it from the breach. They stated they're still determining the full scope of the incident, and they're going to work alongside their experts to figure this out. The FBI is also involved in this, apparently, and they also enclose instructions on how to enroll in a free 2-year identity theft protection and monitoring service.
Since this was 2 weeks, that means we had quite a number of data breaches. So our common practice when we have a lot of data breaches is just to cover a handful of them up front. Usually we try to pick the biggest ones or like the most relevant ones. Next up, we have a data breach at a dealership software. Motility, thank you. Henry's got the show notes up on screen for the video. They're a car dealership software, and they had a data breach impacting 766,000 clients. I don't think we figured out how to pronounce this one. Killen ransomware claims the Asahi brewery attack and leaks the data. Asahi is a Japanese beer company. They're like the biggest beer company in Japan, I think. Renault and Dacia UK, which are car companies in the UK, one of a data breach impacting customers.
There was a bug in India's income tax portal. This is one of the many issues with apparently the Indian government's security with government-run operations. So if you are in India and you are tied to this, make sure to look into this story. Electronics giant Avnet has confirmed a breach, and they say that stolen data is unreadable. Allianz Life says a July data breach impacted 1.5 million people. We have been covering this one, and now we actually have final numbers for this. It's hard to keep up with all these data breaches. And finally, Park Mobile pays, drum roll everybody, video listeners probably already see, but audio listeners get a drum roll. It's $1 each for 2021 data breach that hit 22 million people. It's not actually $1 up front, 25-cent credit that can be used 4 times.
That'll take us into the company section. The headline says landlords demand tenants' workplace logins to scrape their pay stubs. The actual logins. This comes from 404. The person they were speaking to for this article, they said earlier this year they were verifying their income in order to start a lease at an apartment complex in Atlanta. The apartment complex used a tenant screening service called Approve Shield. The landlord required 60 days of pay history or 4 pay stubs, which is fairly common. Approve Shield is in part powered by a tool called Argyle, which verifies people's incomes, and it does this by having people log into their corporate employer HR services such as Workday and scraping information stored within. The renter said that after they logged in, they noticed something unusual. Quote, Argyle hijacked my live Workday session, stayed hidden from view, and downloaded every pay stub plus W-4s back to 2024, each PDF seconds apart. Workday audit logs show dozens of print events from 2 IPs from a MAC address which I do not use. Approve Shield knew the 60-day limit, yet mined everything. Unquote. The person provided 404 Media with a screenshot which shows them receiving a wave of emails from Workday saying the PDF of their pay stub is now available for download. The screenshot shows 14 emails concerning pay slips, many more than the 4 the service was supposed to download. The renter 404 spoke to said that the same credential harvesting model now dominates Georgia rentals. They pointed to other companies such as PayScore, Nova Credit, whose leadership includes an Argyle co-founder, and Snapped, which also uses Argyle. Realistically, if a potential tenant doesn't give up their login credentials, they won't be able to rent the apartment. Opt-out means no housing, the person said. Oh, I didn't include it in the show notes, but in the article, they actually pointed out this is potentially illegal because like a lot of companies have very strict NDAs and policies about access control and who's allowed into their systems.
Okay, so this next one, Amazon's Ring plans to scan everyone's face at the door. So this Ring feature is, quote, invasive for anyone who walks within range of your Ring doorbell. How this works is it's called Familiar Faces, and it's going to be available on Ring doorbells and security cameras starting in December. Okay, there is some good news that this is opt-in. So they said the feature will be turned off unless the Ring device owner chooses to use it. Then, if you see your neighbor or a friend pop up in the video footage from your Ring doorbell or security camera, you can tag them in the Ring app by name, or by a moniker such as neighbor. They explain how the facial recognition works, and they also said that privacy experts say that the use of the technology risks crossing ethical boundaries because of its potential for widespread use in residential areas without people's knowledge or consent. One thing that's interesting, and again, for people who say laws don't matter, this is another example where laws actually can help you, because under Illinois and Texas laws, companies can face large fines unless they obtain permission to collect or use data from your body, including fingerprints and unique patterns derived from your face. Portland restricts use of facial recognition. What that means is that this feature won't even be available in those areas. So if you're in Texas, Illinois, or Portland, Oregon, you don't have to worry about this at all. If you're in other places, you have to worry about this.
Meta plans to sell targeted ads based on data in your AI chats. Meta announced on Wednesday that data collected from user interactions with its AI products will soon be used to sell targeted ads across its social media platforms. The company will update its privacy policy by December 16th to reflect the change and will notify users in the coming days. The new policy applies globally except for users in South Korea, the UK, and the European Union, where privacy laws prevent this type of data collection. If a user chats with Meta AI about hiking, for example, the company may show ads for hiking gear. However, a Meta spokesperson told TechCrunch that the privacy update is broader than just Meta AI and applies to all the company's other AI offerings. That means Meta may use data from AI features in its Ray-Ban smart glasses, including voice recordings, pictures, and videos, to further target its products. Meta may also use data from new AI feed videos, Vibes, and its AI image generation product, Imagine. Conversations with Meta will only influence ads on Facebook and Instagram if a user is logged into the same account across products, which they usually are. There is no way to opt out, according to Meta. The company says user conversations with AI around sensitive topics, including religious views, sexual orientation, political views, health, racial or ethnic origins, so on and so forth, will not be used to show them ads.
Microsoft removes even more Microsoft account workarounds from Windows 11 build. They essentially went through and got rid of the one that was called Ubi bypass no workaround. They announced it was removing earlier this year, plus a start MXC local only workaround. For context here, if you try to set up a new Windows 11 computer, it's going to force you to create a Microsoft account in order to get through and actually install the operating system and use it. But people who don't want to use a Microsoft account, because that for whatever reason, right, it's their computer, have these workarounds in place to try to get around it. So Microsoft has essentially in the dev channel patched up one of these, which is the Ubi one, OOBE, however we want to say this. Now, currently is another workaround if you do like a Windows 11 Pro and there's all this stuff there. But I already know that some YouTubers, like Chris Titus Tech, has already done coverage for this. I believe he has a script or something. Of course, I think the most foolproof way to deal with this, in my opinion, is to install via something like Rufus. So if you use Rufus to set up your ISO, there's a check mark on Rufus that literally says like bypass online account. I think it's the easiest thing for most people. Video listeners, you can see the screenshot here. If you customize the Windows installation, there's a check mark, remove requirement for an online Microsoft account.
Imgur, or however you pronounce that, pulls out of the UK after data regulator warns of fines. So the Information Commissioner's Office in March had launched an investigation into various social media platforms, including Imgur, looking at how they use children's data and protect the privacy of minors in the country. The regulator said on Tuesday that it had reached a provisional finding in the investigation. They had notified Imgur's parent company, Media Lab AI, earlier this month that it intended to impose a fine. The regulator said Imgur's decision to restrict access in the country was a, quote, commercial decision taken by the company, unquote. Our findings are provisional, and the ICO will carefully consider any representations from Media Lab before making a final decision whether to issue a monetary penalty. We have been clear that exiting the UK does not allow an organization to avoid responsibility for any prior infringement of data protection law, and our investigation remains ongoing.
Yeah, so this is something that I think we've talked about very briefly. So Flock Safety is this safety company, air quotes, for anyone listening to the audio version. So they have this a gunshot detection microphone, but it's now going to start listening for human voices. So this is their Raven product, and it includes the ability of the device to alert police based on sounds, including distress. And in this ad for the product, they now have an image of police getting an alert for screaming. The EFF's major point is that it is pretty easy for them to maybe pick up on gunshot detection without being a major privacy violation, but in order to pick up on something like a scream, it needs to have some kind of like human voice detection. And they also reference many laws that have been violated by Flock and how they're probably not operating under legal territory. And I'm sure that's going to be an unfolding thing. The EFF also cites how this can be problematic technology in the first place. Police showing up to alerts they think are gunfire only to find children playing with fireworks is a recipe for innocent people to get hurt. This isn't hypothetical. In Chicago, a child was shot at by police who thought they were responding to a shooting thanks to a shot spotter alert. Introducing a new feature that allows these pre-installed Raven microphones all over cities to begin listening for human voices in distress is likely to open up a whole new can of unforeseen legal, civil liberties, and even bodily safety consequences. That's what I have for the story.
So this one's hot off the presses, and we're still learning more about it. Spyware maker NSO Group confirms acquisition by U.S. investors. An NSO spokesperson told TechCrunch on Friday that, quote, an American investment group has invested tens of millions of dollars in the company and has acquired controlling ownership, unquote. Confirmation of the deal came soon after Israeli tech news website Calculus reported on Friday that a group led by Hollywood producer Robert Simmons, who I saw in another headline is responsible for Happy Gilmore, agreed to purchase the surveillance tech maker in a deal valued in the tens of millions of dollars. The spokesperson said this investment does not mean that the company is moving out of Israeli regulatory or operational control. The company's headquarters and core operations remain in Israel. It continues to be fully supervised and regulated by the relevant Israeli authorities, including the Ministry of Defense and the Israeli regulatory framework. NSO is something that we talk about because they are a really big name in the space and they make a lot of headlines, and it is privacy and cybersecurity related because their whole business model, for those who don't know, if you've heard of like the Pegasus spyware, NSO is the group behind it. What's called a zero-click malware. It means that it can hack your phone remotely with, you don't have to click a link or do anything. They find these little bugs in the software that Apple and Google don't know exist, and they leverage that and they get into your phone. And it's used by governments. Allegedly, it's used to like fight serious crimes and terrorism. But I mean, it only ever seems to make the headline when it's used to spy on journalists and activists and stuff like that. So yeah, we cover it because it makes big news and it is related. For the average everyday person, our general take is that like these spyware software is not specifically a concern, but the fact that there are vulnerabilities, the fact that these groups are like they do exist, these capabilities exist, that's definitely something to have on your radar. That'll take us into the research section, and we're going to start off with tile tracking tags can be exploited by tech-savvy stalkers, according to researchers. So researchers found that each tag broadcasts an unencrypted MAC address and unique ID that can be picked up by other Bluetooth devices or radio frequency antennas in the tag's vicinity to track the movements of the tag and its owner. The location of a tag, its MAC address, and unique ID also get sent unencrypted to Tile servers, where the researchers believe this information is stored in clear text, giving Tile the ability to track the location of tags and their owners, even though the company claims it does not have this capability. Researchers say this would give Tile the ability to conduct mass surveillance on its users and potentially provide information to law enforcement and others. Researchers also found that Tile's anti-stalking protections can be easily undermined if a stalker enables an anti-theft feature that Tile offers with its tags. Additionally, someone could falsely frame a Tile owner for stalking by recording the unencrypted broadcasts that the Tile makes and replaying those broadcasts in the vicinity of another Tile user, making it seem like the former is stalking the latter. The researchers reported their findings to Tile's parent company, Life360. They reported that last November, so almost a year now. But they say the company stopped communicating with them in February. Wired sent Life360 an email asking for a response. A spokesperson sent a reply that did not explicitly address the problem, saying that they'd made quote unquote a number of improvements. Tile sells standalone tags, but its tracking technology is also embedded in laptops, phones, smartwatches, and other products made by companies like Dell, Bose, and Fitbit. The researchers reverse engineered Tile's protocol, an Android mobile app used with TileMate, the company's most popular tracker tag. They say their findings may not apply to other models of tags or the Tile technology used in products made by third parties. And then the article goes on to basically explain how Tile tags work similar to air tags. You know, basically it sends out a Bluetooth signal and it kind of relays off existing Bluetooth, because most people leave Bluetooth on their phones. And so it helps kind of create this giant mesh network that they can use to communicate. So since 2021, Ring cameras, Echo devices, and Tile tags have been integrated in Amazon's Sidewalk network, meaning Ring and Echo devices can pick up the location of Tile tags as well. An attacker only needs to record one message from the device to fingerprint it for the rest of its lifetime, according to one researcher. And the researchers say many of the problems they found could be addressed simply by Tile encrypting the broadcast from its tags, and they don't understand why the company hasn't followed the example of its competitors.
So there's an event startup, Partiful, which wasn't stripping GPS locations from user uploaded photos. This is a pretty well-known issue nowadays. So when you take a photo, if you give your camera app location permissions, which a lot of people do, if you get a brand new iPhone and you open the camera app for the first time, or an Android phone, it'll ask you, like, would you like the camera to access your location? And that's because it writes the location to the metadata of the photo, and that's permanently stored on the photo. You can remove it, of course, but if you don't do anything, it's kind of just always there, and everything that you upload that photo to will also get the location information. By default, normally, if they know what they're doing, we'll strip that so that anyone who downloads the photo can't see where the photo is taken. Partiful wasn't doing that, and this allows people to create online invites with a retro maximalist vibe, allowing guests to RSVP. It sounds like, yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory what they're doing. So if you want to host an event and you want people to like RSVP to it and know the information, then there you go. but almost all the digital files contain metadata and they were not stripping the GPS information. Using the developer tools in a web browser, you could access all this information, and they have an example here on screen if you're watching the video. And after discovering the flaw, they alerted the co-founders by email because they don't have a public means for reporting security flaws. And they said to TechCrunch on Friday that the vulnerability was already on their team's radar and was recently prioritized as an upcoming fix. It has since been fixed. So Particle gave runaround answers when asked about security and to provide references. So that's pretty much the story. Not too much to add there, but I'm glad they fixed it.
That'll take us into politics. We'll start off in Switzerland. This is kind of a big one. Swiss voters backed electronic identity cards in close vote. In a referendum on, I think this was a couple Sundays ago, because, this is the last couple weeks of stories, 50.4% of voters supported an electronic ID card, while 49.6% were against, and founding pollsters who had forecasted stronger support for the yes vote. Turnout was 49.55%, higher than expected. The narrow win will come as a relief to Switzerland's main political parties, which had mostly supported the plans for EID. Both houses of the Swiss parliament had backed the measure with large majorities, and the government had recommended a yes vote. But voters rejected an earlier version of the EID in 2021, largely over objections to the role of private companies in the system. In response to these concerns, the Swiss state will now provide the EID, which will be optional and free of charge. Swiss authorities said the EID would help people prove their identity online, making it easier to access government services or prove their age, for example, when buying alcohol. The EID, which is linked to a smartphone, can also be used in brick-and-mortar businesses, for instance, to open a bank account or prove an age in bars and clubs. To ensure security, the EID is linked to a single smartphone. Users will have to get a new EID if they change their device. Swiss people could still choose to use a physical ID card, which has been in place for decades. An ID card containing biometric data such as fingerprints, or maybe only fingerprints, will be available from the end of next year.
Reminder that, and the article mentions this, at the end of 2026, all EU citizens should be able to have a digital wallet, which allows you to store ID cards, driver's licenses, here my camera's blocking this, and university diplomas in one place online. So I don't know what the details are for that. I don't know if that's going to be private or secure, but just kind of a news flash for people to kind of keep tabs on timelines. I'm just going to combine the next couple stories because they're both about ICE, the immigration and customs enforcement in the US. They are moving to dramatically expand their social media surveillance with plans to hire nearly 30 contractors to sift through posts, photos, and messages and raw material to be transformed into intelligence for deportation raids and arrests. It's still in the planning phase, so nothing's happening quite yet, but it shows that each site would be staffed with a mix of senior analysts, shift leads, and rank-and-file researchers. Vermont would see a team of 12 contractors, including a program manager and 10 analysts. California would host a larger, nonstop watch floor with 16 staff. Together, this would operate as intelligence arms of ICE's Enforcement and Removal Operations Division. They'll receive tips and incoming cases, research individuals online, and package the results into dossiers that could be used by a field of vices to plan arrests. Oh, field offices. Oh, I see. It blocked off. Yeah, it split the word in half on my speed reader. That looks bizarre. They'll also be armed with things like LexisNexis and Clear, which we've been talking about a lot. And then just an extension of this, a second story, ICE is to buy a tool that tracks locations of hundreds of millions of phones every day. This is from a contractor called Penlink, and 404 doesn't show this, but I'll read some show notes here. It leverages a proprietary data platform to compile, process, and validate billions of daily location signals from hundreds of millions of mobile devices, providing both forensic and predictive analytics. The products the document is discussing are Tangles and Weblock. Companies that obtain mobile phone location data generally do it in two different ways. The first is through software development kits, or SDKs, embedded in ordinary smartphone apps like games or weather forecaster. And the second is through real-time bidding.
Next story, Apple and Google reluctantly comply with Texas age verification law. There's actually really not much to this story. So the Texas App Store Accountability Act requires app stores to verify users' ages and impose restrictions on those under 18. Apple said the developers will now have, quote, to adopt new capabilities and modify behavior within their apps to meet obligations under the law, unquote. Apple's post noted that similar laws will take effect later in 2026 in Utah and Louisiana. Google also recently announced plans for complying with the 3 state laws and said the new requirements reduce user privacy. Once the law goes into effect, users located in Texas who create new Apple accounts will be required to confirm whether they are 18 or older. All new Apple accounts for users under 18 will be required to join a family sharing group, and parents or guardians will need to provide consent for all App Store downloads, app purchases, and transactions using Apple's in-app purchase system by the minor. Apple said it will update an API and introduce new APIs to help developers comply in what the company called a privacy-preserving way, and promised more details and technical documentation coming this fall. Google outlined similar similar concerns about the Utah law in a March 2025 post. Quote, the bill requires an app store to share if a user is a kid or teenager with all app developers, effectively millions of individual companies, without parental consent or rules on how the information is used. That raises real privacy and security risks like the potential for bad actors to sell data or use it for other nefarious purposes. While the requirement is limited to several states for now, U.S. Representative John James and Mike Lee have proposed a U.S. law to make similar rules apply nationwide. Lee argued that age verification and parental consent are needed because, quote, big tech has profited from app stores through which children in America and across the world access violent and sexual material while risking contact from online predators.
Sir Ted Cruz has blocked a bill that would extend privacy protections to all Americans. There was a bill that Senator Ron Wyden asked the Senate for a unanimous consent from fellow senators to pass his legislation on Protecting Americans from Doxing and Political Violence Act. And unlike other, perhaps misleading names for bills, this one isn't so misleading. You can read the bill yourself if you want to go through it. Wyden's bill was designed to protect government officials, lawmakers, and their families from having their personal information sold or traded by data brokers, and extend them to every American in person living in the United States. Cruz, however, was the sole objecting senator to Wyden's bill, claiming without evidence that the bill could disrupt law enforcement, such as knowing where sexual predators are living. So Mr. Cruz also objected to a second piece of legislation that Wyden introduced soon after, which would have extended the protections for federal officials and lawmakers to state officials and their staff, as well as survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault.
And our last piece of political news comes from California. Governor Newsom signs data privacy bills to protect tech users. I do want it to be noted, this came directly from Gavin Newsom's website. So obviously there's a little bit of a pro-Newsom bias here. I'm going to go ahead and quote his article. It says, what you need to know. This is kind of like the summary at the top of the article. Governor Newsom signed AB 656, which requires social media companies to make it clear and easy for a user to delete their account, and requires that deletion also trigger full deletion of the user's personal data. So a lot of the time, I don't think we know how rampant this is because I don't think we have any like actual statistics because companies are not very forthcoming with this. But we do know that at least sometimes when you delete your account, all they really do is like disable your ability to log in and the company still retains all of that data, which is why we recommend a lot of the time that if you're going to delete an account, you go ahead and like delete all your posts, delete all your friends lists, like actually delete everything. And again, they may still keep it. We don't know, but it's one more way to at least try is kind of what I'm getting at. So yeah, this is designed to prevent that, where it's like, no, if they say they delete their account, you have to actually delete the data. Newsom also signed two additional bills to help consumers maintain better control of their data. SB 361, which strengthens the data broker registration law by providing consumers with more information about the personal information collected by data brokers and who may have access to consumers' data, and AB 566, which helps consumers exercise their opt-out rights under the California Consumer Privacy Act by requiring browsers to include a setting to send websites an opt-out preference signal to enable Californians to opt out of third-party sales of their data at one time instead of on each individual website.
We're now going to enter the FOSS, free and open source world. This one is from F-Droid and Google's developer registration decree. This is from the F-Droid team. It's on their blog, and they pretty much say that if Google gets what they want, which I'll cover in a second, F-Droid will cease to exist. Essentially, what Google's trying to do is force all developers, even ones that only develop apps on GitHub, open source apps, F-Droid, have to still hand over their signing keys and all of their personal information, including their ID and everything about themselves to Google. F-Droid is saying, we literally can't facilitate this. We don't know anything about our users. We don't even know how many users we have. We don't ask for any kind of verification. And we wouldn't be able to exist if Google does this. Essentially, Google's trying to kill sideloading and only allow sideloading in a situation where a developer essentially KYCs themselves. If this were to go into effect, the developer registration decree will end the F-Droid project and other free and open source app distribution sources as we know them today, and the world will be deprived of the safety and security of the catalog of thousands of apps that can be trusted and verified by any and all. F-Droid's myriad users will be left adrift with no means to install or even update their existing installed applications. And they also have a great mention here because Google really tries to, mention security and how security, these sideloaded apps, they're out to get you. But F-Droid pretty much says they've actually hosted malware repeatedly on the Google Play Store. And also, F-Droid doesn't really have any history of this. F-Droid only builds open source apps. They actually compile them on their ends. Again, it's a pro and a con. It means he has some trust in F-Droid, but it means F-Droid can actually go through and filter out these apps and see if there's anything weird in there. And they also track what kind of outgoing connections the app makes. And they pretty much say, like, our approach is through transparency. Google's approach is through just trust me, bro, I'm Google.
All right, our next story comes from Signal. And I mean, honestly, for end users, this really isn't a big deal. Like, you don't have to do anything, but it's just, a Signal update. It's good to know. The title says Signal Protocol and Post Quantum Ratchets. So honestly, most of this went way over my head. This is one of those blog posts where they go into deep detail. So if you're a cryptographer, developer, and you want to know more, definitely dive in because they go into great detail. Here is the TLDR, which I think came from the end of the article, if I remember correctly. Signal is rolling out a new version of the Signal protocol with the triple ratchet. It adds the sparse post-quantum ratchet, or SPQR, to the existing double ratchet to create a new triple ratchet, which gives our users quantum-safe messaging without taking away any of our existing security promises. It's being added in such a way that it can be rolled out without disruption. It's relatively lightweight, not using much additional bandwidth for each message to keep network costs low for our users. It's resistant to meddling by malicious middlemen. To disrupt it, all messages after a certain time must be dropped, causing a noticeable denial of service for users. We're rolling it out slowly and carefully now, but in such a way that we'll eventually be able to say with confidence every message sent by Signal is protected by this. Its code has been formally verified and will continue to be so even as future updates affect the protocol. It's the combined effort of Signal employees and external researchers and contributors, and it's only possible due to the continued work and diligence of the larger crypto community. Crypto is in cryptography, not cryptocurrency. And as a user of Signal, our biggest hope is that you will never even notice or care, except one day when headlines scream, OMG, quantum computers are here, and you can look back on this blog post and say, oh, I guess I don't have to care about that because it's already been handled. So that's the TLDR. And again, if you want specific details on how it works, they do not shy away. So go ahead and check out the blog post.
This is very quick. I'm not going to go too far into it, but Ubuntu 25.10, questing Quokka. It's powered by Linux 6.17, and it also has GNOME 49. Other highlights, it includes sudo rs as the default implementation of sudo, and TPM-backed full disk encryption, recovery key management. Another interesting change is the implementation of Ubuntu Insights, a replacement for Ubuntu Report that promises to give users more control over the non-personally identifying system metrics that they choose to share with Canonical. The metrics collection is, of course, optional, so yeah, it's just a slight improvement there. Lots of other changes, but nothing major besides what we just shared on the privacy front, so you can check out more if you want to learn more.
Next one is pretty quick. It's not directly privacy or security related, but it's related to Mastodon, and it's pretty cool. So I just thought we'd share it here real quick. Mastodon is taking cues from Blue Sky with plans for its own starter pack. So what Blue Sky did is they have starter packs, and I think these are. I'm not a Blue Sky user, so I apologize if I get this wrong. But basically, users can create their own suggestion list, and they could base it on like cybersecurity or pop culture, actors, music, whatever, metal, rap. Anyways, and a lot of people on Blue Sky have found that really helpful because then they can go get this pack and they can just hit the ground running. And now they've got a full feed of people that they can follow and, enjoying the platform a lot sooner, I should say. Mastodon is now ready to roll this out. They say they are going to make some key differences. For example, they say packs should be an extension of the service's existing account discoverability features. This came from TechCrunch, so they didn't really dig into detail about what that means. But I guess the point is it's going to be a little bit more natively integrated instead of however Blue Sky does it. They also say that opting out of packs can be disabled in the settings. In addition, users will be notified when they're included in a pack. On a Blue Sky, a user who wants to be removed from a starter pack would have to report the pack or block the user who made it. Mastodon said it aims to offer a simpler mechanism to remove themselves, similar to how it allows users to remove their posts from the newly launched quotes. So if you don't want to be in a pack, you can go disable that. I think you'll have the ability to remove yourself from individual packs if you're like, I don't mind being added to packs, but I think this person included me in the wrong one or whatever.
More good news. Firefox Profiles, private focused spaces for all the ways that you browse. TLDR, beginning October 14th, they're rolling out profile management, kind of like what you guys know on Chrome or Brave or any other Chromium-based browser. Each of them have their own bookmarks, logins, history extensions, and themes. It's an easy way to stay organized, focused, and private. They also worked with disabled people to make profiles not only compliant, but genuinely delightful to use for everyone. That collaboration shaped everything from the visual design, like the avatars, colors, and naming, to the way that profiles keep sensitive data like medical information private.
And then our last really quick FOSS story, I just kind of wanted to signal boost this. Phylin is doing a Black Friday sale this year, as many companies will. The final return of Pro Lifetime plans. So if you're still looking for an encrypted cloud provider, or maybe you already use Phylin, this could be something you might be interested in. They said for the very last time, we are bringing back our Pro Lifetime plans, Pro 1, 2, 3, and X. Once Black Friday is over, these plans will be gone, most likely for good. The starter lifetime plan will stay available as usual for now, but all pro lifetime tiers will be retired after this final round. That will begin on November 24th and will end after Black Friday.
We're going to go into the Misfits, and the first one is enshittification. I'm sure a lot of our audience might know this already, but if not, the concept is you create a very appealing service. Like, let's say you're a tech company, you create Uber, you get everyone on the platform. Once you have market share and everyone's on your platform and there's no competitors, then you start exploiting users. And then, you start making things a bit more expensive. You start adding fees that you're not supposed to. So then you start screwing users. Then you start screwing over businesses, and you start also doing that. And then by the time you're done with it, then you just have a platform that just gets worse and worse, and its only purpose is to it's becoming shittified essentially. So this is a term coined by Cory Doctorow. So he wrote a whole book about it. It's brand new. So just kind of a shout out if you're interested in a new book to maybe pursue. Again, it's a funnier way to say things are getting worse. And he makes a specific diagnosis about the state of the digital world and how it is affecting all of our lives. So, yeah.
And those were all our stories this week. So the UK is demanding an Apple backdoor yet again. Not much to that story yet, but we'll keep you guys updated. If you're in the UK, definitely pressure your politicians to be like, no, this was not popular the first time, still not popular. Windows is losing more workarounds to avoid Microsoft accounts. Fortunately, it sounds like there's already some people who have found new workarounds, but again, same thing. If you want to put pressure on Microsoft to stop doing that, I don't know how effective it'll be, but what else can we do? Amazon is bringing facial recognition to their Ring cameras, so be aware of that, and much, much more. And now I will turn it over to Henry to talk about this week's sponsor.
EasyOptOuts. I'm not going to use show notes. It's really good. I've been using them. They're very affordable. There's nothing as affordable as they are right now, the market whatsoever. And there might be some free services, but they're not going to give you the same quality because we've seen Consumer Reports research, Privacy Guys research, Wired as well, went ahead and gave them a really high recommendation. And yeah, for the value, there's just no beating it. It's $20 a year. A lot of these services, it's that kind of rate per month. So it's kind of ridiculous how much cheaper it is. And the founders even said, we don't know why the other people are charging so much for a service that just isn't that expensive to run. They're very cool dudes. There's no third-party contractors, and they also have business plans. Nothing but really positive things to say about the service right now. So check it out down in the description when you use that link. It supports them. And we also want to thank them for supporting our podcast. And it's a perfect sponsor for all of you that we're very fortunate to have.
That'll be everything for this week. So thank you guys for listening. Links to all the stories, as always, can be found in the show notes if there's one that you want to learn more about or share with a family or friend. If you have a story you think we should cover, please send it to news@surveillancereport.tech. We get some really good leads from you guys sometimes. The final thing we want to ask, please share the podcast around. If there's a story you think would be relevant to a family or friend, send that their way. Make sure you're subscribed. Give us a rating if you're on a platform that does ratings. It really does help. Henry mentioned a couple weeks ago, we've met some people who have found us through just cold, suggested to them in their feed or whatever. And so, yeah, that does help us a lot. We're trying to reach as many people as possible with privacy, and everything that you guys do helps us do that. So thank you again for listening, and we'll be back next week with more news.